Welcome to the OK Not OK podcast. I am the SportsZu, and today we are betting the Royal Rumble, and we're back again for the second straight week, so that is great for us having a clear recollection of what just happened a week ago on Saturday night's main event. But horrifically, we went 3-1 in the picks to bet and picks to win because Braun Strowman got destroyed by Jacob Fatu, but he got credited with a DQ win, and that is absolutely killer for us because obviously we had the analysis right, but the outcome was wrong. And I went back to look at DQs in other PLE matches in 2024, and the only ones were Rhea Ripley defeating Liv Morgan at Bad Blood in that shark cage match when Raquel Rodriguez made her triumphant return to attack her. And then earlier at last year's Royal Rumble, Logan Paul defeated Kevin Owens when KO got caught using brass knuckles. So both of those were DQs that were ways to keep the titles on the champions at the time. And Rhea's win was the second biggest upset post WrestleMania, but that was even at just plus 400. So even that was not particularly similar to what we experienced last week. So the only somewhat similar result in 2023 was when Bobby Lashley defeated Brock Lesnar by DQ by low blowing him. But Lashley was going to win that one, so that's not really the same either. So we have to look back another entire year to 2022, where the only similar result to what we saw last week was at the Royal Rumble then, when Seth Rollins defeated Roman Reigns by DQ when Reigns refused to let go of the guillotine even though Rollins had made it to the ropes. Because like Rollins, Strowman got the win because his opponent was simply too vicious. But yes, this is the WWE where crazy things happen. But truly, if we only get this exact kind of result once every other year, well, I guess at the end of the day, this is just a lump that we have to take and move on. But it now gives us a pretty big hole that we have to climb out of in 2025. Alright, so anyways, for our records, there's not really that much of a change in our percentages since it was 3-1. And as I said, at Saturday night's main events, champions retain, and it's a glorified house show, which it proved to be yet again, and unfortunately, Strowman and Fatu was also a glorified house show because you don't really see that result that much in PLEs. So anyways, we're going to count from Backlash all the way through until WrestleMania for our records this year. So for now, we have a 47-10 record in picks to win and 43-14 record for picks to bet. And for props, there were none yet again, so we remain at 16-4. So overall, we're at 63-14 for picks to win, which is 81.82%, and 59-18 in picks to bet, which is 76.62%. But unfortunately, all losses are not created equal, which is certainly the way this one went. But anyways, let's turn the page and get to the Royal Rumble. And as always, we like to start with the history. This is the 38th annual Royal Rumble, and it is, of course, one of the original Big Four PLEs. And they haven't shown us any ping pong balls throughout this last month of people declaring for the draft, so there's nothing we can even try to take away from winners coming out of certain numbers. So we're going to skip that. But of course, last year, Cody Rhodes won his second Royal Rumble in back-to-back years, and then Bayley won for the women. Now, Rhodes is not planned to be in this Royal Rumble, so we have nothing to take away there as well, and no one has won 3 in a row. But for the women's side, we don't have any repeat winners yet at all, so maybe this year will be the year because Bayley, Rhea, Ronda, Bianca, Charlotte, Becky, and Asuka all at least have odds for them this year, so I guess it's a possibility. But I would say that only 3 out of that list at least have a pretty high chance of being the first to win 2 women's Royal Rumbles. Now for prior winners for the men, we have McIntyre, Rollins, Orton, Reigns, Cena, and even The Rock as a possibility. And we even have some less likely former winners who are possibilities here with Lesnar, Nakamura, Sheamus, and Rey Mysterio. And if you count the greatest Royal Rumble, even Braun Strowman. Now, Stone Cold Steve Austin leads the way with 3 wins, so Cena, Orton, and Lesnar are the possibilities to get a third, and I guess also that very outside chance with Cody Rhodes. So, Squared Circle posted the prior odds for winners on Reddit a few weeks ago, and for the men, since 2013, the favorite has won 9 out of 12 times, so definitely keep that in mind. But last year, Cody Rhodes was only the number 3 favorite. But when we look at the women, the favorite has won 5 out of the 7 Royal Rumbles, including Bayley last year, and the last time a favorite did not win the Royal Rumble was when Charlotte won in 2020, when she was the 3rd favorite. Now let's talk about most eliminations. First for the men, Kane remains in the lead with 45, but I don't think he's going to be getting any more. But after that, among the current stars, we have Strowman with 34, Reigns and Lesnar with 32, Orton with 29, Cena with 25, and Punk with 20. Now for the women, Rhea and Nia are tied with the most at 20, followed by Bayley with 17, Shayna with 16, and Bianca and Charlotte tied with 15. Then it is a pretty steep drop down to Natalya and Michelle McCool at just 8. Now for the most eliminations for the men in a single Royal Rumble, Roman Reigns had 12 in 2014, but he was passed by Brock Lesnar with 13 in 2020, and that ties Braun Strowman's 13 if you count that greatest Royal Rumble back in 2018. But importantly, excluding those ones, no one else has reached 8 eliminations since Kane had 11 in 2001. Now, 8 is our key number here for both the men and for the women. And speaking of the women, Nia had 8 eliminations herself last year, which tied Bianca and Shayna, who also had 8 apiece in 2020. Now, Rhea is just right behind them. She had 7 in 2021 and 7 more in 2023. And in 4 of the 7 women's Royal Rumbles, we've had at least 7. So that is an important number to keep in mind, and indeed with 4 of the last 5. Now, Charlotte has led twice with 5 eliminations each time, but again, 7 or 8 is the key number for the women. And let's talk about the shortest time in the match when someone comes right in and is immediately tossed right on out last year. Valhalla only stayed in the match for 5 seconds, and on the men, it was even worse for JD McDonough, who was in there for 3 seconds. Then in 2023, Baron Corbin lasted 7 seconds, and Chelsea Green lasted 5 seconds. But things change up in 2022, as Mighty Molly had the least time in with 20 seconds, Kofi Kingston for the guys with 21. Then 1 year earlier, in 2021, we had Carmella with 47 seconds and Hurricane Helms with 30 seconds. Then in 2020, this is our last one, I promise, Chelsea lasted 12 seconds and Eric Rowan lasted 8 seconds. So our takeaway there is that both the men and the women have had someone in the ring for less than 10 seconds in each of the last 2 years, but there were none in 2021 and 2022, but then Rowan achieved it with just those 8 seconds in 2020. Next, we want to talk about entrant number 30. Last year, for the men, Sami Zayn was the number 30 entrant, and for the women, it was Liv Morgan. And in both cases, the superstars were making a return from being out, as Zayn had been out for 6 weeks, but Liv was making a much bigger return, being out for 6 months. Now for 2023, Cody Rhodes made a huge return from that injured, torn pec. And for the women, Nia shocked everyone since she was released in November of 2021, but she made a one-off appearance at number 30. In 2022, we had quite of a surprise with Brock Lesnar losing the title earlier in the night, but he made that surprise appearance to win the Rumble at number 30. But for the women, Shayna Baszler was not a surprise entrant that year. And before 2022, the surprises at entry number 30 were less often than that, but of course, they still happen from time to time. We just often had a big superstar being that final entrant. So that is really all the history that you need to know before we get to all of our prop bets at the end here. But first, let's start with our matches. It's just a 4-match card because those Rumbles usually take an hour or more. So let's start it off with our undisputed WWE Championship ladder match between Cody Rhodes at minus 4,000 for a 97.56% implied probability against Kevin Owens, your Winged Eagle champion, at plus 900 for a 10% implied probability. Well, is there any reason why Cody Rhodes should lose here? Well, we just talked about Brock Lesnar in 2022, so if you want to give Cody Rhodes a chance at a three-peat, it would be pretty crazy, but he could lose the title and then make that surprise entrance at number 30 and win for the 3rd straight year. That admittedly would be pretty interesting, but we did just see that scenario a couple years ago. Now on the other hand, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn deserve to main event WrestleMania with that title. Or at least I think the doc would say that. Anyways, does anyone think those two are going to main event WrestleMania with the title? Man, I don't think too many people do. It would be great, but yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. Now, I do think it is pretty likely that those two will be fighting each other at WrestleMania, but just not as the main event. But however, in the storyline, it is certainly possible that Sami Zayn actually comes through and helps his BFF to win this match. But admittedly, it's much more likely that he turns his back on him and starts a feud with him, which is what I discussed yesterday. Now, why is Cody Rhodes going to win this one? Obviously, he's got the actual belt, and the WWE wants him to be in one of those main events for WrestleMania, and we know Triple H loves his long streaks, so it's pretty unlikely for him to even slingshot the title from Rhodes to Owens and then right back on over to Rhodes. So yeah, he's just gonna keep this on Cody Rhodes. So in the end, our pick to bet and pick to win is Cody Rhodes. In our second match, we have a WWE Tag Team Championship 2 out of 3 falls match between DIY at minus 500 for an 83.33% implied probability against the Motor City Machine Guns with a plus 300 line for a 25% implied probability. Well, DIY had one successful title defense against them on January 3rd, the first SmackDown of the year on the USA Network, but it was declared a no contest because Pretty Deadly and Los Garza literally fell on top of everyone in the match, so the Motor City Machine Guns submission moves didn't count there where it looked like they were going to get the win. Now, why would DIY retain the titles? Well, I think the main storyline here is with Pretty Deadly, so it would make sense for Pretty Deadly to, for a change, come through for them and help them get the win. And honestly, I don't think this is the end of their story, so that seems to make the most sense here. But Pretty Deadly could turn on DIY because they are sick of not getting any benefit out of them and aren't anywhere closer to getting their title shot. So yeah, they could turn on DIY and actually help the Machine Guns here. Or of course, the Machine Guns could just win cleanly because they have been booked very strongly since they entered the WWE, and they've already been the champs and are 3-0-1 in 2025 with, again, that no contest looking like they were going to win with those submissions locked in. So yeah, it seems like the WWE really loves these guys for some reason. But at the end of the day, DIY only had a 1-month reign in July, And this time, it seems that they are trying to tell a real story here, and I just don't think we're at the end of it yet. So DIY deserves a little longer title reign. They are going to pick up the win, winning 2 falls to 1. So DIY is our pick to bet and pick to win. Up next, we have the Women's Royal Rumble match, and we are going to note here that the odds are as of Thursday afternoon, even though obviously this is coming out on Friday. So if things have changed since then, we don't have updated news to make any changes. So again, we're going to do the best that we can with the information that was available at the time. And we're also only going to talk about 5 favorites for both of these matches and then just say a couple words about several other people. But, you know, basically everyone that is listed has no chance here. For example, Natalya is one of 25 women with a plus 10,000 set of odds, which is a 0.99% implied probability, and those are probably even too high of odds for her, and she was one of the better options at that plus 10,000 line. But let's get right to it with our favorite in this match. It is Charlotte. She's at minus 200 for a 66.67% implied probability. She has gotten vignettes the last 2 weeks, so she'll be making her first appearance in over a year since injuring her knee at the end of 2023. Now, of course, she can win this match because she is Charlotte Flair, and she's a strong favorite to be in a championship match against Tiffany Stratton at WrestleMania. So of course, the easiest way for Charlotte to get to that match is to win the Royal Rumble. And also, if she's still recovering just a little bit, she doesn't have to be in that many matches in order to go right to that WrestleMania main event. Now, it sounds like she's going to have a top girl persona when she returns, and that's likely for her to be the heel in her rivalry against Tiffy as the face, which would be obviously a turn for her. But it is hard to be a heel in a Rumble match as a new returnee who's not been there for an entire year. Now, I would say that gives her less of a chance to win, but I guess I'm just not sure. Now, as we stated at the top, the favorite has won each of the last 4 Women's Royal Rumbles, but she was not the favorite when she won. But I would say that I would prefer that she shows her dominance a bit more to go on to have to win a few matches, and including winning inside the Elimination Chamber. So let's just see what the other women have in store here. So our number 2 favorite is Bianca Belair. She's a plus 180 or 35.71%. So Bianca can always win just about every single match, and she did indeed win the Royal Rumble in 2021. There are reports that WWE is strongly considering Bianca versus Rhea at WrestleMania. And yes, this would be a great match, but isn't this match going to be available for many, many more years to come? I wouldn't necessarily call the iron hot here between them right now. It's just that they're not on the same show, and they're both currently faces. And yes, face versus face matchups happen a lot more often at WrestleMania than anywhere else. But shouldn't we save this match for a time that makes more sense? As I think this match is so good that it should actually be saved for a year when the women are going to get a chance to main event one of the 2 nights of WrestleMania. And this year, I don't really see that as an opening for something to be in the cards like that, so I would not want to waste this match this year. Now seriously, are we not going with Bianca versus Jade at this year's WrestleMania? That certainly seemed like the clearest match for the entire year with their tag team title run, but it would really be an indictment against Jade if that match doesn't happen. So for my sake, I hope they don't go with Bianca. So at number 3 is Io Sky. She's a plus 325 for a 23.53% implied probability. And this has been my pick since our first prediction video right after SummerSlam. And you know that I told you to take Io when she was at plus 10,000 several months ago. So man, those odds have really shortened, huh? Oh well. Anyways, so I hope you cashed that ticket from all those months ago. Unfortunately, Io has kind of gone cold here at the wrong time. At least that's what it feels like to me. She lost cleanly to Liv for the title at Saturday night's main event, and also lost in the semifinals of the women's IC tournament. She has just one tag win so far in 2025, and that was her only match. So she's not exactly jumping off the page as a Rumble winner at this exact moment. Now, of course, on the flip side, she did have our women's match of the year at WrestleMania last year, so I think there is still a possibility she could get the win. We will note here that she is temporarily on her own, but those injuries to both Dakota and Kyrie don't look like they're going to keep them out for very long. And also, Asuka could come back very quickly and even as soon as this Rumble match. So we're not going to read much into that, though some people seem to think that she being on her own at this exact moment gives her a better shot to win. But as it stands right now, Io is also a face, so that's another face versus face matchup if she goes against Rhea. So for me, right now, just nothing screams Io to win this match. At number 4 is Becky Lynch at plus 500 or 16.67%, and she did not get vignettes in the same way that Charlotte did, so her participation remains a mystery, and there are reports out there that she's still not confirmed for this match, as WWE still needs to work out creative plans. But at the time of the Rumble, you know, you can't believe everything that you read, so I think that she is a no-brainer to enter the Rumble. And I even think it's more likely that she wins because she's not been advertised, as opposed to the way they handled Charlotte. In fact, she was indeed my pick to win in last week's Women's Royal Rumble prediction video. And while I preferred Rhea versus Io and then Becky versus Lyra in my prior prediction video, it feels like that just might not be the way to go right now. And since Becky had to go through the chamber last year to get her shot at Rhea, I think if she's slated for one of those main event spots for the women, they can't do the exact same thing as last year. So it feels like the man should be the one to be the first Women's Royal Rumble repeat winner so that she can go on to get her rematch against Rhea. And at number 5, surprisingly, is Alexa Bliss at plus 1,000 for a 9.09% implied probability. Unfortunately, there has been concerning news with her that she was supposed to come back a few weeks ago with the Wyatt Six, but this angle was pulled as she is still in a contract dispute with the WWE, so there's certainly no guarantee that she even appears here. And even if she does, in what persona will that be with? And is she really actually going to win the match with that return? I certainly just don't see her going right into a championship match at WrestleMania, so I think we can eliminate her. As for some notable others, I don't see Liv winning at plus 1,600, as I think she has gotten enough chances at Rhea despite an amazing year. It also doesn't make sense for me to have them hotshot Jordynne Grace into a title match at WrestleMania at plus 2,800. But if there is one long shot to take, I guess it's Nia at plus 5,000. But even that doesn't feel right. She's gotten so many chances now at both titles that I don't think we're going to go either way with that. And for her to get her shot at Tiffy, I think she can actually get that title shot before WrestleMania. So in the end, the history shows that you should pick the favorite in Charlotte to win at minus 200, but with the caveat that I've been really bad at picking Royal Rumble winners, fortunately not on video, I think Becky has just as good of a chance as Charlotte does to win here with much better odds for us. So Becky Lynch is our pick to win and pick to bet. And our last match is the men's Royal Rumble, and here we have 18 men with plus 20,000 odds, which is 0.50% implied probability. That group is led by Rey Mysterio, so I feel pretty badly for him there. Alright, so let's get to our favorite with John Cena. He's at minus 110, which is 52.38%. And of course, the loudest rumors of them all out there are Cody Rhodes versus John Cena at WrestleMania. This has certainly not been my prediction, but as far as star power is concerned, this would be pretty great for John Cena's last WrestleMania. So I certainly get it if this is your pick, because there's not much else you have to say about John Cena to get him right into that WrestleMania main event. However, I prefer that he win his 17th title in his last match, or at least much later in the year. And that way he kind of has to chase that record to make it seem more interesting than to put that belt right onto him at WrestleMania. But I have to say, this week's Monday Night Raw kind of spooked me out a little bit, because that angle with Cody Rhodes showing that he's tired kind of gives us that first chink in his armor that he might just turn heel at least a little bit, so that he goes up against that super babyface in John Cena. Now, I admit that I have had Cena versus Braun Breaker for the IC title at WrestleMania so that he can win something, and indeed, becoming a Grand Slam champion is a pretty good accomplishment in your final WrestleMania. But admittedly, it's not looking great for that, so he certainly deserves to be the favorite. Up second is Seth Rollins with plus 175 odds for 36.36%. He certainly talked a good game on Monday Night Raw this week when he left open the possibility of going for either title. Now, I had Rollins actually winning the World Heavyweight Championship already, so I'm disappointed that he's even in this match. And WWE also burned my WrestleMania match by going with Rollins versus Punk on the Netflix premiere. Of course, we could see that match again, but it seems like the winds are blowing in another direction. Still, this one could be as simple as Gunther versus Rollins at WrestleMania, which would be a good match, but we indeed could also get back to Rollins versus Punk one last time. And of course for him, Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre also seem to be possibilities, so there's just a lot up in the air for Seth Rollins. At number 3 is CM Punk. He's at plus 225 for 30.77%, and I picked him yesterday, and I picked him all the way going back to my post-SummerSlam predictions for WrestleMania. But honestly, that segment with Cody Rhodes at the end of Raw has me scared for him as well, as Rhodes did not seem to even be on the table as an opponent for Punk. And I will say that him saying that he will challenge Rhodes makes him less likely to win, because I don't think WWE wants to go with Rhodes versus Punk. But anyways, I still think that he could win, and then something happens on Raw, kind of like we've seen the last couple years, with him changing his mind and then re-pursuing the World Heavyweight Championship. So I'm not going to waver right now. And this guy, he deserves to have one Royal Rumble win, and he needs to have one WrestleMania main event, and that should have happened last year, and he's not getting any younger, so if it's ever the right time, that time is now. The number 4 favorite is Roman Reigns at plus 300 for a 25% implied probability. Now the problem here is that if Reigns wins, you know he has to pick Cody Rhodes, and I really don't think that's the way the WWE wants to go here again. So if not Rhodes, Punk is the leader in the clubhouse right now for Roman Reigns, which is not necessarily good for my Punk pick either. But yet, yesterday, I simply handed Roman Reigns the World Heavyweight Championship at the Elimination Chamber so that he could face my Rumble winner, CM Punk. So I don't know. And we also always have The Rock hanging out there looming large over everything. And everyone wants to see The Rock versus Roman Reigns. So let's just talk about him. He's the number 5 favorite at plus 1200 for 7.69%. And if he appears in this Rumble, he's almost certainly going to win it. It's just that I don't think that's happening at this point. That Netflix premiere just let the air out of the balloon. But here's the hoping that he's tricking me and everyone else. And I've had The Rock versus Cody Rhodes in the title match since my predictions after SummerSlam. And, well, we certainly would be happy to take Rock versus Reigns as well. It just means that the latter probably means no Rumble win. So let's talk about some others here. Logan Paul's at plus 1600, and there have been some Gunther rumors out there, so perhaps Paul is worth a little dabble. We'll just say that for now. We have Randy Orton at plus 2800, and of course there have been some Cody Rhodes rumors for him for WrestleMania. But I think this one would really be going through a long-term storyline that would be continued to be built up instead of just having him win the Rumble, so I don't like that one. Sami Zayn's at plus 3300, and while I don't think it's going to happen, if you believe that KO is going to win that title earlier in the night, well, I think we really have to skyrocket up the odds for Sami Zayn. So as soon as you see Kevin Owens win, be ready to hit that button to try to get in some odds for Sami Zayn to win right away. And somehow Drew McIntyre's at plus 5,000, which is just 1.96%, which seems a little low for someone who's been so prominently featured in the top storyline. So I guess you could think about that one. And lastly, Brock Lesnar is at plus 10,000. He just might be the best ultra long shot. And I have to say, I definitely don't think he's appearing in this Rumble, but even Paul Heyman brought up that he is the one behind the one on this past Monday Night Raw. So we know that brings up your thoughts about Brock Lesnar. And with an implied probability of 0.99%, if Lesnar does indeed show up to be a surprise entrant at number 30, wow, man, that really could be great to see Lesnar versus Gunther at WrestleMania. So yeah, he might have better than 1% odds here. Now I will say I do think the legal issues ultimately squash the chances of him appearing at all. But man, this certainly could be worth a sprinkle. But right now, for me, this is really between John Cena and CM Punk. And in the Last Time Is Now tour original announcement, it sure sounded like John Cena was going to appear in the Royal Rumble and then appear in the Elimination Chamber. And while he could have just been talking about any old regular match, it really felt like he was telegraphing being in the chamber match. And that has been enough for me to stick with CM Punk as my theory to win this match. Now, maybe you want to stick with the favorite, but I'm not changing at this point. I am sticking to my guns. CM Punk is my pick to bet and pick to win at plus 225. All right, well, the Royal Rumble is the best time for prop bets for the entire year, but admittedly, they are very difficult. But of course, I'm the SportsZu, so I will do my best. So, of course, we basically already gave you the primer for each of these prop bets, so let's get right to it. Number 1, anyone eliminated in under 10 seconds. Now, we have the same odds for both the men and the women, so we'll talk about them together. We have yes at minus 175 for 63.64% and no at plus 135 for 42.55%. Now, Triple H officially took over the booking in July of 2022. So in 2023 and 2024, all 4 Rumbles had someone get eliminated in under 10 seconds. And while this isn't always going to happen, I guess until it doesn't happen, I'm not going to bet against it happening, so yes is my pick to bet for both matches. Up next, most eliminations. Now this is qualified by listed only, so that means we're only picking between these three following men here. So if anyone else has the most eliminations, that doesn't matter. It simply doesn't matter. We stick to just these three. So the favorite is Jacob Fatu at minus 200 for 66.67%. Drew McIntyre second, plus 250, 28.57%. And Braun Breaker at plus 300 for 25%. And those admittedly feel like three pretty good picks to me. But if Saturday night's main event was step number one of showing Fatu as a dominant monster, this is step number two. And that's exactly what I did in yesterday's prediction video. I had Fatu with 6 eliminations, and then Drew McIntyre right behind him in second place with 5. So unless something happens on SmackDown tonight to take him out of the Rumble, we're going with Jacob Fatu as the pick. Now for most eliminations for the women, Nia Jax is your favorite at minus 130 for 56.22%. Bianca Belair is next with plus 155, 39.22%. And Charlotte Flair plus 325%. And I admit I was probably too cute in my prediction video where I had Charlotte start as number 1 but have 0 eliminations despite making it all the way until the final 2. But we will say on the other hand, I had Nia leading with 7 eliminations. Now the only problem here for Nia is that she led last year with 8. So will they do the exact same thing 2 years in a row? And while we've only had 7 Royal Rumbles for the women, we've not yet had back-to-back years with the same person leading in eliminations. And with Nia showing up so often recently on both shows, maybe everyone is sick of her at this point, and this is one of those years where they all join together and throw her out before she can get all those eliminations. But on the other hand, I had Jade Cargill with the second most eliminations in my prediction video instead of those 2 that are listed here, so that is enough of a gap in the logic. So I'm going with the favorite. Nia is our pick to bet. Up next is most eliminations by any one person for the men. The over-under is set at 7.5. Under 7.5 is minus 250 with 71.43%, and over is at plus 170 for 37.04%. And like we talked about at the beginning, since Kane's 11 eliminations in 2001, only 2 times we've had 8 or more eliminations. Now, could Jacob Fatu do it this year? Well, I think he's not even established enough to do that, as Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar were the only 2 to do that in the last 24 years, and that means that's only happened 8.3% of the time. So yeah, I think for now this is an easy pick with under 7.5 eliminations. Let's do the same thing for the women. Most eliminations by any person. The line here is set at 7 eliminations, so we do have that push potential with 7 eliminations. Now the over on 7 is minus 140 for 58.33%, and under is a plus 100 for 50%. As we said, Nia tied the record last year with 8, and I will say it sounds a little awkward to have a 3-way tie for the lead. So it is certainly possible that they break the tie just so that they only have to say one name going forward. But I don't think we get exactly 8 eliminations again for that reason. And so therefore we have to think of someone getting 9 eliminations. So will someone break that record with 9, or will we have 7 or less? So again, Nia just had 8 last year, so will she do it again 2 years in a row? I tend to think not, so I think we're fairly safe to at least get a push with 7 eliminations, so that makes us lean towards the under. So that means our pick is going to be for the underdog, which is under 7 eliminations at plus 100. All right, let's stick with the women and who will enter the Rumble last. And this one also has that listed only qualifier. So if someone else enters at number 30 who's not on this list, then we just go to number 29 and 28 until whoever that is on this list is the last person. All right, so the co-favorite here, we have Jade Cargill and Becky Lynch at plus 300, which is 25% each. Ronda Rousey, surprisingly, is at plus 500 for 16.67%. She is tied with Charlotte, also with plus 500. Then Alexa Bliss is next with plus 700 odds for 12.5%. And lastly, Asuka plus 800 for 11.11%. And I really don't think that Ronda's coming back, so we're just going to scratch her off right away. Alexa and Asuka are possibilities, but I'm not counting on them appearing at all, so we're going to rule them out. Because Charlotte has been telegraphed, I don't think she gets the number 30 spot. But the one thing in her favor is that she is at least guaranteed to be in the match, unlike everyone else on this list. Now the co-favorite here, I think they are the right picks because I had Jade entering at number 29, and then I had Becky entering at number 30. And since Becky is the bigger star here and not known that she's going to return, I think she is the right pick here. The only thing against her is that maybe they don't want to give her both the 30 spot and the win like I want to do, but oh well, for me, Becky gets the nod as our pick to bet. Now let's go to the men for last to enter. Same deal, listed only. Brock Lesnar, surprisingly, the favorite at plus 300 for 25%, followed by John Cena, plus 350, 22.22%, The Rock, plus 400, 20%, Roman Reigns, plus 500, 16.67%. Randy Orton and CM Punk finished this off at plus 600 for 14.29%. So as we said off of the top of the show, we've had surprise returns at number 30 in 5 of the last 6 overall Rumbles, including all 4 in the last 2 years. So I think that's the way that Triple H likes to go. So we're going to favor a return here. So let's go right down this list here. I cannot believe that Lesnar is the favorite. I've seen nothing indicating that he is appearing here. So for me, this is a big NO. John Cena makes sense, but he is advertised, so I'm leaning against it here. Just like in the same way that I'm leaning against Charlotte Flair. The Rock, well, if he's in it, this makes perfect sense for him to enter as number 30 or even as number 31. But if you think The Rock is cooking something, it's better to bet on him to win the Royal Rumble itself because you get better odds there. So I don't blame you if you want to go that route, but if you're so confident, I guess go ahead and bet them both. All right, Roman Reigns makes sense with his grand entrance, but he is also advertised, so I tend to lean against him. CM Punk, same thing, but at least in the storyline, he could try to call in a favor to get that number 30 spot. So that is a possibility that actually makes sense through the story. But that leaves one man, which is why I went with Randy Orton in my prediction video yesterday. We don't know if he's returning, and it is also possible that he could instead interfere in the ladder match. But I think that he is a legend that won't be a letdown to enter as the number 30 spot, even with all of the other talent in this Rumble. So I love that we get an underdog here. Randy Orton is our pick to bet. And that's the end of the regular props, but somehow they now have listed Royal Rumble Super Bowl crossover bets. And since I'm the SportsZu, I guess we have to do those. But I do have a caveat here. I am pretty bad at non-WWE sports betting, but let's give it a shot. So number 1 out of 2 of these, what will be higher? Total eliminations by Jacob Fatu, minus 120, 54.55%. Or receptions by A.J. Brown, also at minus 120 at 54.55%. So wow, they're starting this off with a pick'em. All right, let's talk about A.J. Brown here first. His over-under is set at 4.5 receptions, with the over with the juice at minus 168 on a prominent online betting site that is not the same one where I get these WWE odds, and his under is at plus 128. However, I think the book has kind of messed this up because his alternate receptions are 5.5 at minus 182 and 6.5 at plus 110. So where we cross that 50-50 line is around that 5.5 number. So that seems to be what the line should be here for his actual over-under. All right, let's talk about AJ's history here. He had 6 receptions 2 years in the Super Bowl against these same Chiefs, but he only averaged 4.3 receptions per game in 2022. Now in 2024, in the regular season, he averaged 5.2 receptions per game, but in the postseason, that has dropped to 3.0 receptions per game. And since there's only 3 games, it was 1 catch in the first round, 2 catches in the second round, and 6 catches last week in the NFC Championship game against the Washington Commanders. Now the Chiefs have a pretty good defense, ranked 6th overall in the NFL, but their rushing defense is actually stronger, 8th overall, while their passing defense is 18th overall. However, the Eagles' offense is certainly fueled by their running game, led by Saquon Barkley, who got over 2,000 rushing yards in the regular season, and of course, Jalen Hurts is much better known for his running than his passing. So of course, the Eagles lean on their running game. And I also don't think this is going to be a game where the Eagles get down by a lot because Philly has a strong D to keep this one close, and they also favor that running game, so this could be a low-scoring affair. And also the Chiefs are certainly perfectly fine playing close games, as they seem to never want to cover their spreads. So admittedly, this is a case where the Eagles are unlikely to get down big and have to keep on throwing. And based on this season, I think we're probably looking at 3 to 4 receptions here for Brown, so I like the under for him. Now, of course, as we flip to WWE, I have Fatu leading in eliminations, so I do like him to have 5 or more eliminations. So my pick to bet here is Jacob Fatu over AJ Brown, but if you are into your Super Bowl betting, maybe just take the under 4.5 receptions at plus 128 instead of taking this bet at minus 120. And prop number 2, what will be higher? Patrick Mahomes' rush yards is at minus 140 for 58.33% versus length of match in minutes for the Cody Rhodes versus Kevin Owens match. That is at plus 100 for 50%. Now the Mahomes over-under is set at 29.5, and that is even at minus 110 apiece for both sides of that bet. In the regular season, Mahomes only averaged 19.2 rush yards per game, but in the playoffs, that has increased to 28.5 yards per game. Now they did have a bye, so they've only played 2 games. He had just 14 yards against Houston, but had 43 yards last week against Buffalo in the AFC Championship game. But of course, the Chiefs make the Super Bowl every single year, so in the last 2 Super Bowls, he had 44 yards in 22 against these same Eagles, and then last year he had 66 yards against the 49ers. But yards may be hard to come by in this game with Philly's tough D, so maybe Mahomes' legs will be a factor to open things up for the Chiefs offense. And then just in general, I do really like QB rushing overs in the playoffs because the QBs are willing to take more risks to improve their team's chances to win. And this indeed has proven true for Patrick Mahomes over his already illustrious career. So for Mahomes himself, I really love his over at 29.5 rushing yards. Now back to WWE, Cody Rhodes has 7 title defenses and a Crown Jewel Championship match since he won the title against Roman Reigns at last year's WrestleMania. So if we remove his SmackDown cage match against Solo Sikoa and his Saturday night's main event match against Kevin Owens, his other title matches have averaged 27.5 minutes per match. So I think it's safe to say that we would probably, in a normal show, expect between 25 to 30 minutes, which is probably why these odds are pretty close and make a lot of sense. But in last year's Royal Rumble, we had a fatal four-way for the undisputed WWE Championship, and that one only lasted 19 minutes and 30 seconds, and we had a US title match that only lasted 14 minutes. So perhaps Triple H doesn't want to go too long on these other matches on the cards because the Rumbles are already really long, usually taking over an hour. And we also have a 2 out of 3 falls match for the tag team titles, so that's already also going to be somewhat longer. And in a comparison, in other ladder matches, in the Money in the Bank ladder matches this year, the men's match was just 16.5 minutes, and the women's match was 16 minutes and 50 seconds. So it's possible that ladder matches are just going to be somewhat shorter as well, because we can only slam each other into ladders so long before someone finally needs just to go up that ladder and grab, well, in this case, the titles. So putting that together, I certainly think 25 to 30 minutes is the absolute max range here, and a strong possibility that they're more around the 20-minute mark to fit this in for time. So I think this is a very, very strong play for the Mahomes rushing yards to be the pick at -140. All right, so let's go through our recap here. First, the matches. Cody Rhodes is our pick to retain. DIY is also our pick to retain. Becky Lynch is winning the Women's Royal Rumble, and CM Punk is winning the Men's Royal Rumble. Now for the props, we are saying yes on both matches, having someone eliminated in less than 10 seconds. We have Jacob Fatu and Nia Jax as the individuals with the most eliminations. We're going with under 7.5 eliminations for the men and under 7 eliminations for the women. And in that final spot, entering last, we have Becky Lynch at number 30 for the women and Randy Orton entering last for the men. And in those two crossover bets, we are going with Jacob Fatu's eliminations over AJ Brown's receptions, and we're going with Patrick Mahomes rushing yards over the length of the Rhodes versus Owens match. So with that, the Royal Rumble is finally here, and it is my favorite event of the entire year. But please don't bet any more than you can afford to lose, because you saw what happens at Saturday night's main event when you have big favorites every once in a while. And I think that's the only thing that can truly spoil the Royal Rumble this time around. But if you haven't seen my full predictions for the men's Royal Rumble match that came out yesterday, make sure to go right on over here and check that out, because we have every single entry and elimination to see how we came up with my picks here today. And as always, I'm the SportsZu, and this has been the OK, Not OK podcast.